On December 21st, at 7:47 in the evening, I was sitting at my desk finishing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed. The office was nearly empty. Most of my colleagues had already left for the holidays, and the fluorescent lights hummed above me like they were counting down the minutes until I could leave too. I glanced at the screen. The message was from my sister Victoria. "We are not celebrating Christmas with you this year." She added a second line. "We do not need you." I read it twice. Not because I was shocked, because I had been waiting for this moment for 3 months. I set down my pen, looked at those words again, and smiled. Not a bitter smile. A real one. Then I typed back one word: cool. I let my thumb hover over the send button for exactly 2 seconds before adding a second line. Then my financial commitments to this family end today. My attorney has been notified. I hit send and placed my phone face down on the desk. Victoria thought she was delivering a punishment. She thought I would cry, call back, beg for forgiveness like I always had. She did not know what I had already set in motion 3 months ago. And she definitely did not know what would happen 24 hours later. My name is Hannah Brooks. I am 34 years old, and I work as a senior accountant at a real estate investment firm in downtown Denver. I live alone in a modest 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. I have a good job, a reliable car, and a savings account I built dollar by dollar over the past decade. On paper, I am the definition of responsible. In my family, I am something else entirely. I am the emergency fund, the credit cushion, the silent investor in someone else's American dream. For 10 years, I had been the person everyone called when things went wrong. When my parents fell behind on their mortgage, I was the one who sent $1,400 a month to keep them afloat. When my sister Victoria maxed out her credit cards, I was the one who covered her payments until she got back on her feet. When the family wanted a vacation to Cancun, I was the one who fronted the deposits that somehow never got repaid. And when Victoria needed a co-signer for her car loan because her credit was temporarily damaged, I was the one who signed my name on the dotted line without asking questions. I did all of this because I believed that was what family meant: sacrifice, support, showing up even when it cost you. What I did not understand, what I refused to see, was that the giving only went one direction. I gave, they took. And somewhere along the way they stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. Victoria is 4 years older than me. She has a husband named Marcus, 2 daughters named Lily and Emma, and a beautiful house in Boulder that everyone in the family praised her for buying on her own. Our parents, Richard and Patricia Brooks, have always treated her like the sun around which the rest of us orbit. Victoria gets the compliments. Victoria gets the attention. Victoria gets the benefit of every doubt. And me? I get the phone calls at midnight asking if I can cover another emergency. 3 months before that text message arrived, I discovered something that changed everything. I was preparing to buy my first home. After years of saving, I finally had enough for a down payment on a small condo. I pulled my credit report expecting to see the clean financial history I had worked so hard to build. Instead, I found a nightmare. There was a loan for $47,000 in my name, a loan I had never applied for, a loan that was 63 days past due. The address listed on the account was my parents' house in Boulder. The co-signer was Victoria Marie Brooks Callahan. I stared at that screen until my eyes burned. $47,000. Someone had stolen my identity and used it to take out a loan I knew nothing about. My first instinct was to call the police. My second instinct was worse. Because I remembered something. 2 years earlier, Victoria had asked to borrow my driver's license and social security card. She said her insurance company needed to verify beneficiary information. She said I was listed on her life insurance policy and it was just paperwork. I had been touched that she cared enough to include me. I handed over the documents without a second thought. There was no life insurance policy. There never had been. My sister had used my identity to steal $47,000, and our parents' address was all over the paperwork. They had to know. The mail went to their house. The statements went to their house. For 2 years, they watched my credit get destroyed and said nothing. I did not confront them, not then. Instead, I did what I do best. I gathered evidence. I requested documents from the bank. I pulled credit reports from all 3 bureaus. And I found 2 more accounts I had never opened. A retail credit card with a balance of $6,200. A line of credit for $14,300. Both past due. Both listing my parents' address. The total damage came to nearly $85,000. That was the moment I stopped being the family doormat. I hired an attorney named Daniel Reyes. I started building a case, and I waited for the right moment to make my move. For 3 months, I played the role of the good daughter, the supportive sister, the reliable Hannah who never caused problems. I showed up to family dinners. I smiled when Victoria bragged about her kitchen renovation. I said nothing while my mother told me how proud she was of everything Victoria had accomplished. And the whole time, I was counting down the days. Victoria's text was not a surprise, it was a gift. She handed me the excuse I needed to stop pretending. And the response I sent back, the one about my attorney, was not a bluff. It was a promise. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Victoria first, then my mother, then my father, then Victoria again. I let every call go to voicemail. I finished my quarterly report, saved the file, and shut down my computer. Then I gathered my things, walked to the parking garage, and drove home through streets glittering with Christmas lights. My phone kept buzzing on the passenger seat. I did not look at it once. By the time I got home, I had 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I scrolled past all of them until I found the one name I was looking for. Daniel Reyes, attorney at law. He had sent me a message earlier that day. Everything is in place. Just say the word. I typed back 4 words. The word is given. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat down on my couch, and did something I had not done in years. I did not answer my family's calls. I did not apologize for existing. I did not beg for another chance to be tolerated. I just sat there in the quiet of my apartment, watching the snow fall outside my window, and waited for the chaos to begin. They thought they did not need me. They were about to find out exactly how wrong they were. To understand what happened next, you need to know what happened 3 months before that text message arrived. It all started with a dream. The most ordinary American dream there is. I wanted to buy my own home. September 15th was the day everything I believed about my family began to crack. I remember sitting at my small dining table after work, laptop open, a glass of water sweating beside me. The Denver evening was still warm, and I had the windows cracked to let in the breeze. I was excited. After years of saving, of budgeting every dollar, of saying no to vacations and new cars and all the things my sister seemed to acquire without effort, I was finally ready to make an offer on a condo in Highlands. Nothing fancy. Just a small place with good light and a view of the mountains. Something that was mine. The first step was pulling my credit report, standard procedure before applying for a mortgage. I expected to see a clean history. I had never missed a payment in my life. I had one credit card that I paid off every month. My student loans were long gone. My credit score should have been somewhere around 780, maybe higher. The page loaded. I looked at the number and felt my stomach drop. 612. That was impossible. I scrolled down looking for the error, the glitch, the explanation that would make this make sense. And then I found it. A personal loan. $47,000. Opened in October of 2022. Lender Mountain West Credit Union. Status 63 days past due. The address listed as my residence was 4847 Pinewood Drive, Boulder, Colorado. That was my parents' house. I had not lived there since I was 18 years old. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. $47,000. A loan I never applied for. An address I had not called home in 16 years. My first thought was identity theft. Some stranger had stolen my information and taken out a loan in my name. It happened all the time. I would file a report, dispute the account, and everything would be fine. Then I looked at the cosigner field. Victoria Marie Callahan. My sister's married name. Right there on a loan I had never seen, never signed, never agreed to. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I put my hands flat on the table to steady myself. There had to be an explanation. Victoria would never do something like this. Not to me, not to her own sister. But even as I thought that, a memory surfaced. October 2022. 2 years earlier. Victoria had called me one evening, her voice unusually warm. She said she needed a tiny favor. Her insurance company required verification of beneficiary information. She told me I was listed on her life insurance policy, and they needed copies of my identification to confirm everything was legitimate. Just paperwork, she said. Nothing to worry about. I had been touched. Victoria rarely showed me that kind of consideration. The idea that she had named me as a beneficiary on her life insurance policy made me feel for once like she actually cared, like I mattered to her beyond what I could provide. I drove to her house that weekend and handed her my driver's license and social security card. She made copies while I played with Lily in the living room. A week later, I forgot all about it. There was no life insurance policy. I understood that now, sitting at my kitchen table with a credit report that proved my sister had forged my signature. She had not borrowed my identity for paperwork. She had borrowed it to steal $47,000. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just sat there, feeling something cold settle into my chest. The death of trust is a quiet thing. It does not announce itself with thunder or tears. It just slips away, leaving a hollow space where belief used to live. The next morning, I called Mountain West Credit Union. I kept my voice steady as I explained that I had not opened this account and needed documentation. The representative was polite, apologetic, clearly trained to handle situations like this. She said she would send me copies of all loan documents within 5 to 7 business days. Then she said something that confirmed what I already suspected. "Ma'am, I am showing a cosigner on this loan. A Victoria Callahan. Is that someone you know?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Yes," I said. "That is my sister." The documents arrived on September 22nd. I remember staring at the envelope for 10 minutes before I found the courage to open it. Inside was everything I needed to understand exactly how thoroughly I had been betrayed. The loan application listed all my correct personal information: my social security number, my date of birth, my employer, my annual income. The purpose of the loan was listed as home improvement and debt consolidation. All correspondence had been sent to my parents' address in Boulder. The phone number on file was Victoria's cell phone. The email address contained my name but was one I had never created. And then there was the signature page. My name signed in handwriting that was close to mine but not quite right. The loops were slightly different. The slant was off by a few degrees. A good forgery, but still a forgery. I held it up next to my actual signature on my driver's license. Anyone looking closely could see the difference. Victoria had not just stolen my identity. She had created a shadow version of me, one that lived at our parents' house and apparently needed $47,000 for home improvements. Home improvements for a house I did not own. I photographed every page. I created a digital backup on a secure cloud drive. And then I did something that surprised even me. I did not call Victoria. I did not demand an explanation. I did not give her the chance to lie to my face. Instead, I requested credit reports from all 3 bureaus: Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. If there was one fraudulent account, there could be more. And I needed to know the full extent of what had been done to me before I made any decisions. 2 days later, I found the second account. A retail credit card from JCPenney. Credit limit $8,000. Opened in March of 2023. Current balance $6,200. Payment status 90 days past due. Shipping address for all purchases was Victoria's house in Boulder. 3 days after that, I found the third. A line of credit from Homestead Financial Services. $15,000. Opened in January of 2024, just 8 months earlier. Balance $14,300. Status in collections. I did the math on a piece of paper, my hand trembling slightly as I wrote the numbers. Personal loan, $47,000. Retail card, $6,200. Line of credit, $14,300. Late fees and accumulated interest, approximately $17,000. Total damage, $84,500. My sister had stolen $84,500 in my name. And my parents' address was on every single account. The statements went to their house. The collection notices went to their house. For 2 years, they had watched this happen and said nothing to me. They knew. They had to know. I sat with that realization for a long time. The sister I had helped through every financial crisis. The parents I had supported with thousands of dollars in mortgage payments. They had looked me in the eye at every family dinner, accepted my generosity, praised Victoria for her accomplishments, and never once mentioned that they were complicit in destroying my future. I could have called the police that night. What Victoria did was a felony. Multiple felonies. Identity theft, forgery, bank fraud. She could go to prison for years. But I did not make that call. Not because I wanted to protect her, because I knew my family. I knew how they operated. If I confronted them now, they would lie. They would gaslight. They would make me the villain. Victoria would cry. My mother would take her side. My father would tell me I was overreacting. And somehow, by the end of it, I would be the one apologizing. I had seen that play too many times before. I knew how it ended. So I made a different choice. I would gather evidence. I would understand the full scope of what they had done. And I would find an attorney who could tell me exactly what my options were. The next week, I found Daniel Reyes. And what he discovered made $84,000 look like pocket change. Because Victoria had not just stolen my credit. She had stolen from our parents, too. And the house they thought they owned, the one I had been paying the mortgage on for 5 years, was not theirs anymore. They just did not know it yet. Daniel Reyes had an office on the 14th floor of a building in downtown Denver. The walls were lined with diplomas and certificates, and the bookshelves held thick volumes on fraud law and financial crimes. He was a former prosecutor in his mid-40s with calm eyes and a reputation for being thorough. I found him through a recommendation from a colleague who had gone through a messy divorce. He handles complicated situations, she told me, the kind where family and money get tangled up together. I arrived at his office on September 27th, clutching a folder that contained everything I had gathered. Credit reports from all 3 bureaus, loan documents with forged signatures, screenshots of the text conversation where Victoria asked to borrow my identification, bank statements showing accounts I had never opened. I spread it all across his conference table like evidence at a crime scene, which I suppose it was. Daniel reviewed each document in silence. He did not interrupt or ask questions. He just read, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad, his expression revealing nothing. When he finished, he set down his pen and looked at me directly. "Ms. Brooks, what your sister did is a felony. Multiple felonies, actually. Identity theft, forgery, bank fraud. You could press charges today, and she would likely be arrested within 48 hours. I had expected him to say that. I had even rehearsed how I would respond, but hearing the words out loud made my chest tighten. "I know," I said, "but I need to understand everything before I decide anything." He nodded slowly, like he had heard this before. "That is actually the smarter approach," he said. "Let me walk you through your options." He explained that I had 4 possible paths. The first was criminal prosecution. I could file a police report, and Victoria would face identity theft and fraud charges. Depending on the total amount, she could be looking at 5 to 15 years in prison. My credit would be cleared through fraud affidavits, and I would be legally recognized as a victim. The downside was obvious. My sister would go to prison. My nieces would lose their mother. The family would be destroyed in the most public way possible. The second option was a civil lawsuit. I could sue Victoria for the full amount of the fraudulent debt plus damages. This would force her to acknowledge what she had done, and potentially result in a judgment against her. The problem was that civil cases were expensive and slow, and if Victoria had no assets to seize, I might win the judgment and never see a dollar. The third option was a negotiated settlement. I could confront Victoria with the evidence, demand a repayment plan, and try to resolve this privately. No courts, no police, no public record. The obvious problem with this approach was that it relied entirely on Victoria's cooperation. Given that she had already proven herself willing to commit fraud against her own sister, trusting her to honor an agreement seemed naive at best. The fourth option was what Daniel called the long game. Gather more evidence before making any move. Understand the full scope of the fraud. Build an airtight case. And make a decision from a position of complete knowledge rather than emotion. I want the fourth option, I said without hesitation. I want to know everything. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That is unusual. Most people want immediate action. I met his gaze. Most people have not spent 34 years learning how their family operates. If I move too fast, they will find a way to make this my fault. I need to know exactly what I am dealing with before I confront them. He leaned back in his chair and studied me for a moment. Then he nodded. All right, let me see what I can find. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel conducted an investigation that I could not have done on my own. He requested additional bank records. He traced the flow of money from each fraudulent account, and what he discovered was worse than I had imagined. The $47,000 loan from Mountain West Credit Union had been disbursed in 3 separate transactions. $23,000 went directly into Victoria's personal checking account. $9,000 was withdrawn in cash over 3 separate visits to different branches, and $15,000 was sent as a cashier's check to something called Boulder County Title Company. Daniel cross-referenced that payment with public property records. The $15,000 had been used as part of the down payment on a house in Boulder. Victoria's house. The beautiful home everyone in the family praised her for buying on her own. The house where she hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas parties. The house where I had given her a $5,000 housewarming gift because I wanted to be supportive. Your sister used your stolen identity to buy her dream home, Daniel said. Then she had the audacity to ask you for more money at the housewarming party. I remembered that day clearly. Victoria had looked at my check and said, "That is it? I thought you would help with the landscaping too." I had felt guilty for not giving more. Now I understood why she was so confident. In her mind, she had already taken what she needed. My gift was just extra. The JCPenney credit card told a similar story. $6,000 in charges over 18 months, furniture, appliances, home decor, all of it shipped to Victoria's address in Boulder. The dates of the purchases corresponded with photos she had posted on social media, showing off her new living room set, her upgraded kitchen, her daughter's redecorated bedrooms. But Daniel was not finished. "There is something else we need to discuss," he said. "Your parents." I felt my stomach clench. "What about them?" He pulled out a folder of documents. All 3 fraudulent accounts list their address as your residence. Someone had to receive the mail. Someone had to intercept bank notices and collection letters. The personal loan even required proof of residency. Someone provided utility bills with your name on them. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that my parents had been deceived just like me. But the evidence did not support that fantasy. They had let Victoria use their address. They had watched statements arrive for accounts in my name. They had said nothing while my credit was destroyed. Daniel watched my face as the realization settled in. Either your parents were actively involved, he said, or they were willfully blind. Neither is good. A memory surfaced unbidden. Thanksgiving of 2022, about a month after the first loan was opened. We were all gathered at my parents' house in Boulder. Victoria and Marcus had brought the girls. I had brought a homemade pie and 2 bottles of wine. Dinner was the usual chaos of past dishes and interrupted conversations. At one point, my mother said something that I had dismissed at the time but now remembered with perfect clarity. Victoria is finally getting her finances together. She has been so responsible lately. My father had nodded in agreement. Sometimes people just need a little help to get on their feet. I had assumed they meant emotional support, encouragement, the kind of vague parental pride that costs nothing. But they had known about the money. They just did not know, or did not care, where it came from. Daniel's voice pulled me back to the present. I cannot prove your parents committed a crime without more evidence. But I can tell you this. They created the environment that made this possible. They received mail that was not theirs. They watched your sister spend money she could not have earned. They asked no questions. In my experience, that is not ignorance. That is participation. We spent the rest of that meeting developing a strategy. Daniel advised me to continue paying the minimum payments on the fraudulent accounts to prevent them from going to collections, which would trigger phone calls that might alert Victoria. I was to document every family interaction from that point forward, save every text message, note every conversation, and most importantly, I was to give no indication that I knew anything. "You want me to keep pretending?" I said. He nodded. "I want you to protect yourself by letting them think they have won. It is the hardest thing, but it is also the smartest. So that is what I did." For the next month, I attended family dinners at my parents' house. I smiled when Victoria talked about her kitchen renovation plans. I listened politely when my mother praised Victoria's interior design choices. I played with Lily and Emma in the backyard while the adults discussed holiday plans. And the whole time I was watching, waiting, gathering evidence. They had no idea. They looked at me and saw the same Hannah I had always been. Quiet, reliable, easy to ignore. They did not see the folder growing thicker on my kitchen counter. They did not see the emails I exchanged with my attorney. They did not see the woman I was becoming, one who would no longer accept betrayal as the price of belonging. On October 25th, my mother called with a special request. "We have decided to do Christmas differently this year," she said. "Victoria is hosting at her new house. It is time she took on more responsibility." Then came the real reason for the call. "But we need you to help with the costs. Victoria is stretched thin with the mortgage. Could you handle the catering and maybe the gifts for the girls?" The total she was asking for came to approximately $3,000 for a Christmas celebration at a house partially funded by my stolen identity, hosted by the sister who had committed fraud against me. I told her I would check my budget and get back to her. Then I hung up and stared at the wall for a very long time. They wanted me to pay for Christmas at the house my stolen money helped buy. And that was when I realized something important. Victoria's greed was not the disease. It was a symptom. The real problem was my family's complete inability to see me as anything other than a resource to be extracted. But the moment that truly broke something in me came a week later, at a family dinner where my mother said 7 words that I would never forget. 7 words that made me realize I had been invisible my whole life. And 7 words that sealed my decision to make them see me, finally, completely, unforgettably. I sat on my couch that night with my second glass of wine, watching the messages pile up on my phone. It was 9:30 on December 21st, and my family had spent the last 2 hours trying to reach me. The evidence folder sat on my coffee table, thick with documents that told the story of their betrayal. Outside my window, Denver glittered with Christmas lights. Inside my apartment, I finally let myself read what they had sent. Victoria's first text came at 7:53, just 6 minutes after I sent my response about the attorney. "What do you mean, your attorney? What attorney? Call me back now." The capital letters made me smile. Victoria always shouted when she felt control slipping away. My mother texted at 7:58. "Hannah Marie Brooks, you call your sister immediately. This is not how we raised you." She had used my full name, the way she did when I was a child, and had done something to disappoint her. Which was often. My father's message arrived at 8:12, and the fact that he had texted at all told me how serious they considered this situation. Richard Brooks did not text. He barely knew how to use his phone. "Your mother is very upset. Whatever this is about, we can discuss it like adults. Call home." Then Victoria again at 8:34. "You are being ridiculous. We were going to invite you eventually. Stop being so dramatic." I read that line 3 times. "We were going to invite you eventually." Like I was an afterthought, like my presence at Christmas was a favor they might bestow if I behaved properly. I moved on to the voicemails. There were 4 of them. The first was from Victoria at 8:02. Her voice was angry and clipped. "Hannah, I do not know what game you are playing, but this is not funny. You cannot just threaten to cut us off financially. We have arrangements. Call me back." I paused at that word. Arrangements, not agreements, not help you have generously given. Arrangements. Like I was a subscription service she had signed up for without my consent. The second voicemail was from my mother at 8:15. Her tone was wounded, theatrical. "Hannah, your father and I are very hurt. After everything we have done for you, this is how you treat family?" Victoria is devastated. She was so looking forward to hosting Christmas. Please do not ruin this for everyone. I listened to it twice, searching for a single specific thing they had done for me. I could not name one. The third was Victoria again at 8:47. Her voice had changed, gone softer, more calculated. "Look, I am sorry if the text came out wrong. I was stressed about the party planning. Of course we want you there. Can we just talk, please?" The apology that was not an apology. Sorry if it came out wrong. Not sorry for what I said. Never that. The fourth voicemail was from my father at 9:15. His tone was stern, patriarchal, the voice he used when he wanted to end a discussion. "Hannah, your mother has a headache from all this stress. Whatever point you are trying to make, you have made it. Now be reasonable and call us back so we can sort this out before Christmas. Be reasonable." Those 2 words had been used to silence me my entire life. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. The voicemails were nothing new. I had heard versions of them for 34 years. But there was one moment that changed everything. One sentence that finally made me see what I had been refusing to see. November 2nd, 7 weeks before Victoria's text. A family dinner at my parents' house in Boulder. Everyone was there that night. My father Richard at the head of the table. My mother Patricia orchestrating the conversation. Victoria and her husband Marcus. Their daughters Lily and Emma, 7 and 5 years old, fidgeting in their seats. And me, sitting in my usual spot near the kitchen, ready to jump up whenever something needed fetching. Dinner followed the familiar pattern. Victoria dominated the conversation. She talked about her house renovations. She bragged about the girls' achievements at school. She mentioned that Marcus had received a promotion at work. My parents listened with rapt attention, nodding and smiling, asking follow-up questions. At one point, I mentioned that I was thinking about buying a condo. There was a brief pause. My mother said, "That is nice, dear." Then she turned back to Victoria and asked about her plans for the kitchen backsplash. After dinner, I helped my mother clean up. This was also familiar. Victoria stayed in the living room with my father and Marcus while I scraped plates and loaded the dishwasher. Through the doorway, I could hear them laughing about something. My mother dried dishes beside me, humming softly. Then she said it. "Victoria is really the heart of this family." I kept washing, my hands submerged in soapy water. She has always been special. You understand, do you not, Hannah? You are dependable. But Victoria, she just lights up a room. I waited for her to add something about me, some acknowledgement that I had value beyond being dependable, but she just kept drying dishes, content with what she had said. Then came the 7 words. "We are so lucky to have her. Not we are so lucky to have you both. Just her. Only her." I did not cry. I did not argue. I finished drying the last dish and told my mother I needed to leave early because I had a meeting in the morning. I drove back to Denver in silence. No radio, no phone calls. Just the dark highway and the weight of 34 years finally settling onto my chest. I sat in my car outside my apartment building for 45 minutes that night. Not crying, just thinking. About all the ways I had tried to earn what Victoria was given without asking. The pattern had been there my whole life. I just refused to see it. When we were children, Victoria got dance lessons and gymnastics and summer camps. I got explanations. We cannot afford both. You understand, right, Hannah? Victoria needs the outlet. She got the bedroom with the window facing the garden. I got the smaller room facing the neighbor's fence. When we were teenagers, Victoria had a sweet 16 party with 40 guests and a DJ. I got dinner at home and a card with $20 inside. Victoria got caught sneaking out at 17 and was grounded for a week. I got caught with a B+ on a math test and was lectured for an hour about wasted potential. When we went to college, Victoria's tuition was paid in full by our parents. 4 years at a state university, room and board included. When it was my turn, they sat me down and explained that they had stretched themselves thin for Victoria and I would need to take out loans. I worked 2 jobs through school while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. Victoria dropped out after 2 years to find herself. No one ever mentioned that the tuition money she wasted was never repaid. When Victoria got married, our parents spent $40,000 on the wedding. 200 guests. A destination venue in Sedona. When I asked years later if they would help with my wedding someday, my mother laughed. "Oh, honey, we will cross that bridge when you find someone." Like finding a partner was something I had failed at, rather than something I had simply not prioritized. When Victoria announced her first pregnancy, my mother threw her a baby shower. 50 guests, catered food, a mountain of gifts. When I earned my CPA license after years of studying, I got a text message. "Congrats!" No exclamation point. The refrain was always the same. Victoria needs more support. Victoria is sensitive. Victoria is going through a hard time. And you, Hannah, you are so strong. You do not need us the same way. Being strong was never a compliment. It was permission to neglect me. I was still thinking about all of this when my phone buzzed with a different kind of notification. Not a text, not a call, an email alert from my bank. Security alert. Unusual login attempt. Someone had tried to access my checking account online. The login attempt came from Boulder, Colorado. The IP address did not match any of my devices. Login status, failed, wrong password. My blood went cold. I logged into my banking app and checked the security logs. There had been 3 failed login attempts in the past hour. One on my checking account, one on my savings account, one on my investment account. All from the same IP address in Boulder. All failed because I had changed my passwords and security questions the week before. I checked the timeline. Victoria's text arrived at 7:47. My response about the attorney went out at 7:48. The first bank login attempt happened at 8:23, exactly 35 minutes after I refused to play along. They were not just panicking about losing my financial support, they were trying to access my actual money. Victoria's text was not just cruel, it was a distraction. While I was supposed to be crying and begging for forgiveness, someone was trying to drain my accounts. I immediately called my bank's fraud line. I reported the unauthorized access attempts. I requested a security freeze on all accounts. The representative confirmed that no money had been taken. All attempts had failed. I sat in the darkness of my living room, phone in hand, the Christmas lights outside casting colored shadows on my walls. For 3 months, I had been building a case, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Victoria had just handed me that moment. I opened my laptop and composed an email to Daniel Reyes. Subject line, Phase 2, ready to proceed. I told him about Victoria's text, my response, and the bank login attempts. I told him I was done waiting. I wanted to move forward with everything we had discussed. His reply came at 11:02. I was about to email you. I found something about the property transfer. It is worse than we thought. My office, 8 a.m. Bring everything. I stared at those 3 words. Worse than we thought. I did not know how anything could be worse than $84,000 in fraud and a family that saw me as an ATM. But I was about to find out that Victoria's theft was not the main event. It was just the opening act. Daniel was already at his desk when I arrived at 8:15. The morning light cut through the blinds in sharp lines, and there was a folder on his desk that I had not seen before. He did not waste time with pleasantries. Before we discuss next steps, I need to show you what I found. He slid the folder across the desk toward me. The label read, Brooks Property, Boulder County Records. I opened it with hands that were steadier than I expected. Inside were printouts of property records, mortgage documents, and something that looked like a title transfer agreement. "Your parents' house," Daniel said. "The one at 4847 Pinewood Drive. The one you have been paying the mortgage on for 5 years." I nodded, my stomach already tightening. 6 months ago, the title was transferred. Your parents no longer own it. I looked up at him. What? To who? To Victoria Marie Brooks Callahan. The words did not register at first. I stared at the document in front of me, seeing my sister's name on a property transfer agreement dated June 15th. The house I had been paying for, the house I sent $1,400 to every single month. It belonged to Victoria now. "That is impossible," I said. "I would have known." "The mortgage payments." Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. "The mortgage payments you have been sending to your parents for 5 years. $72,000 total. They never went to the bank, Hannah. Your parents kept the money. Victoria refinanced the house in her name 6 months ago and paid off the remaining balance." I sat very still, processing what he was telling me. For 5 years, I believed I was helping my parents keep their home. Every month I transferred $1,400 from my account to theirs, money I could have used for my own down payment, my own future. And they had lied. They had taken my money and used it for something else entirely. "Here is what I believe happened," Daniel continued. "Your parents fell behind on the original mortgage years ago. Instead of telling you, they let you think your payments were helping. But they were using your money for other things. When Victoria committed the identity fraud, part of that money went toward the house. Then 6 months ago, she refinanced everything in her name, paid off what remained, and took full ownership." He showed me the documents. The title transfer dated June 15th, signed by Richard and Patricia Brooks. A new mortgage in Victoria's name, approved using my stolen credit as part of the collateral verification. The property was now valued at $680,000. So for 5 years, I thought I was helping my parents keep their home. Yes. And they were lying to me the entire time. Yes. And now Victoria owns a house worth nearly $700,000, partially funded by my money and my stolen identity. That is correct. I sat back in my chair and let the magnitude of it settle over me. $84,000 in fraudulent debt, $72,000 in mortgage payments that went nowhere, a house stolen out from under me while I smiled at family dinners and played with my nieces in the backyard. What are my options? Daniel walked me through them again, but this time the stakes were different. Criminal prosecution would mean charges against all 3 of them. Victoria, as the primary perpetrator, facing 5 to 15 years. My parents as accomplices, facing 2 to 7. Civil action would mean lawsuits, forced sale of the house, years of legal battles. A hybrid approach would clear my credit through fraud reports while preserving the option for criminal charges later. If I go criminal, I asked, what happens to my nieces? Daniel paused. They would likely go to their father, Marcus, or into the system if he cannot care for them. Lily and Emma, 7 and 5 years old. They had nothing to do with any of this. They did not choose their mother. They did not choose to be born into a family built on lies. I need time to think, I said. Can we proceed with the credit bureau reports for now? Clear my name without destroying theirs? Daniel nodded slowly. We can. But Hannah, they do not deserve your mercy. Maybe not, but those little girls have not done anything wrong. I drove home in a daze. The Denver streets were bright with midday sun, and everywhere I looked there were reminders of Christmas, wreaths on doors, lights strung on trees, families walking together, arms full of shopping bags. I felt like I was watching it all from very far away. Back in my apartment, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The evidence folder was still on my coffee table. Daniel's new documents sat on top, the property transfer agreement with my sister's name typed in neat black letters. Memories surfaced unbidden. Last Christmas, Lily running to me at the door, her face bright with excitement. Aunt Hannah, Did you bring presents? I had brought presents. I always did. Art supplies I had picked out specifically for her because I knew she loved to draw. Emma's birthday in March. She had just turned 5, shy and quiet like I was at that age. Everyone else gave her princess dresses and toys that made noise. I gave her a picture book about a girl who becomes an astronaut. She carried it everywhere for months. Victoria rolled her eyes and said she did not understand why Emma was so obsessed with that thing. Last Thanksgiving. Lily had whispered to me in the kitchen while the adults argued about football in the other room. "Aunt Hannah, why does Mommy not like you?" I had frozen, dish towel in my hands. "What makes you think that, sweetheart? She talks different when you are not here, meaner. Those girls knew something was wrong in their family. They saw it even when the adults pretended everything was fine. And now their future depended on what I decided to do." The doorbell rang at 1 o'clock. I had not moved from the couch in over an hour. The sound pulled me back to the present, and I forced myself to stand. Megan Chen stood in the hallway. She was my closest friend and had been my colleague at the firm for 6 years. She took one look at me and pushed past into the apartment. "Jesus, Hannah, what happened?" I told her everything, the lawyer meeting, the house transfer, Victoria's ownership of a property I had helped pay for, Daniel's documents spread across my coffee table like evidence of a crime, which I suppose they were. Megan listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat beside me on the couch and took my hand. "Okay, let me make sure I understand. Your sister stole $84,000 in your name. Your parents helped her do it. They have been lying about the mortgage for 5 years. Victoria now owns a house worth $700,000 that you partially paid for, and you are sitting here feeling guilty because of her kids?" I pulled my hand away. "They are innocent, Megan. Lily and Emma did not do anything." Megan turned to face me fully. "Hannah, listen to me. They are using those children as shields. That is not love. That is manipulation. Victoria committed felonies, multiple felonies, and she is hiding behind her daughters to escape the consequences. That is not your guilt to carry. It is hers." My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another message from my mother. "Victoria told me what you accused her of." "I am shocked at you, Hannah. We are your family. How could you believe such lies about us?" Then another. "Think about the children. Think about what you are doing to this family. You are not the Hannah we raised. Something has changed in you." And another. "I spoke with Pastor Williams. He agrees that forgiveness is the only path forward. Whatever grievances you think you have, we can work through them. As a family. But not like this. Not with lawyers and threats." Megan read the messages over my shoulder. She brought in the pastor. Classic move. Notice how she is not denying anything, just talking about forgiveness and grievances. She knows, Hannah. She has known all along. I stared at my mother's words. She was right about one thing. Something had changed in me. I was no longer the Hannah who apologized for existing. I was no longer the Hannah who accepted blame for other people's choices. "They are never going to admit it," I said. "Not to me, not to anyone. In their minds, they are the victims. I am the ungrateful daughter causing problems." "So what are you going to do?" "I do not know yet, but I am done feeling guilty for their choices." My phone rang at 3:45. The caller ID made me freeze. Dad. My father had not called me directly in almost 3 years. Everything always went through my mother. Always. "That is unusual," Megan said. "Dad never calls me." "Maybe you should answer. See what new angle they are trying." I picked up. "Dad." His voice was different from what I expected. Not angry, not pleading, just tired. "Hannah, we need to talk, in person. I do not think that is a good idea right now. Please, just hear me out. There are things you do not know. I know plenty, Dad." A pause. When he spoke again, his voice cracked slightly. "Not everything. Not the things that matter. Tomorrow, come to the house. Noon. Just give us a chance to explain. Your mother does not know I am calling. This is between us, father to daughter." I looked at Megan, who shrugged. "Your call. Fine. Tomorrow, noon." "Thank you, Hannah. I do not deserve it, but thank you." I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment. Father to daughter. He had never said that to me in my entire life. "You think it is a trap?" Megan asked. "With this family? Always. But if there is something I do not know, something that changes any of this, I need to hear it. Even if it hurts." I did not trust my father. I did not trust any of them anymore. But that voice on the phone, tired and broken and almost desperate, was something I had never heard from Richard Brooks before. For the first time in my life, he sounded like a man with nothing left to lose. And that terrified me more than anything else. The drive to Boulder felt longer than usual. I took US 36 through the foothills, watching the snow-dusted mountains rise ahead of me, and tried to prepare myself for what was coming. The evidence folder sat on my passenger seat, thick with documents that could destroy my family. Christmas music played on every radio station. I turned it off and drove in silence. I pulled onto Pinewood Drive at noon. The neighborhood looked like a postcard. Snow-covered lawns, wreaths on every door, Christmas lights waiting to glow when evening came. My parents' house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, the house I had sent $72,000 to protect. The house that now belonged to my sister. 2 cars were in the driveway. My parents' Buick and Victoria's white SUV. A third car I did not recognize sat at the curb, a silver BMW. I parked on the street, not the driveway. I wanted a clear exit if I needed one. The house looked different now that I knew the truth. Not a family home, a crime scene dressed in holiday decorations. I grabbed my folder, walked to the front door, and rang the doorbell like a stranger. Victoria answered. She was dressed casually, her eyes red from crying or pretending to cry. Behind her, I could see the living room arranged like an intervention. My father Richard sat on the main sofa beside my mother Patricia. Victoria's husband Marcus stood by the window, looking uncomfortable in a way I had never seen before. Christmas decorations filled every corner, a tree covered in ornaments, garland draped over the mantel, stockings hung in a row. I counted them quickly. 4 stockings. Richard, Patricia, Victoria, Marcus. There was no stocking with my name. "Hannah," my mother said, rising from the couch. "Thank God you came. Please sit down. I will stand," Victoria muttered from behind me. "Of course you will." My father's voice cut through the room, sharper than I had ever heard him speak to Victoria. "Victoria, enough." Everyone went quiet. I stood near the door, folder clutched against my chest like armor, and waited. Richard cleared his throat. "Hannah, we asked you here because this family is falling apart. Your mother and I have been up all night talking, about everything." He looked at Patricia, who dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "We made mistakes. We see that now." My mother took over, her voice thick with practiced emotion. "We should have told you about the mortgage, about the house. But you have to understand, we were desperate. Your father's business failed. We were going to lose everything." Richard nodded. When Victoria offered to help refinance, it seemed like the only way. Patricia reached for my hand, but I did not move closer. "We did not want to burden you with our problems. You were already doing so much." I let their words hang in the air for a moment. Then I spoke. "You did not want to burden me? I was sending you $1,400 a month. For 5 years. $72,000. Money I thought was paying the mortgage. Money that was actually going where, exactly?" Silence. "Where did my money go, Mom?" Patricia looked at Richard. Richard looked at the floor. Victoria shifted in her armchair. Finally, my father spoke. Bills, credit cards. Some of it went to help Victoria with expenses. I laughed, not with humor, with disbelief. So I was paying for Victoria's lifestyle while she was stealing my identity to fund more of it. That is not a mistake. That is a conspiracy. Victoria erupted from her chair. "Oh, here we go. Saint Hannah, the martyr. You act like you were suffering. You have a good job, a nice apartment, no kids to worry about. Do you know what it is like trying to raise 2 children while Marcus's business was failing? Do you have any idea?" Marcus turned from the window. His face was confused. "Wait, what do you mean, my business failing?" Victoria froze. "My business did not fail," Marcus continued. "We had a rough quarter 2 years ago, but we recovered." He looked at me. What is she talking about? What identity theft? I watched Victoria's face go pale. She had not told him. Her own husband had no idea what she had done. He was living in a house built on fraud, and he did not know. I could have protected her. I could have kept the peace like I always did. Instead, I opened my evidence folder. "Marcus, I think you should see this." I handed him the loan documents, the credit reports, the forged signatures. He took them slowly, like he was afraid of what he might find. The room was silent except for the rustle of pages. Marcus read through the documents, his face growing paler with each one. When he finished, he looked at Victoria. "What is this?" Victoria's voice trembled. "Marcus, I can explain. $47,000? In her name?" He held up the loan document. "You told me the down payment came from your grandmother's inheritance." Victoria said nothing. There was no inheritance, was there? The silence was her answer. Marcus set the documents down on the coffee table. His hands were shaking. "The house. Our house in Boulder. You told me your parents gifted us the down payment from selling their old car and some savings." "They did help," Victoria started, "but the rest came from stolen money, from your sister's identity." He looked at me. "How much?" "The loan was $47,000. $15,000 went directly to the down payment." Marcus stared at the Christmas tree for a long moment. "We are living in a house funded by fraud." Victoria started crying. Real tears this time, ugly and desperate. I was going to pay it back. I was going to fix everything. "When, Victoria?" Marcus's voice was hollow. "When were you going to tell me our entire life is built on a lie?" He stood up, looked around the room at each of us in turn, and walked toward the door. "I need air. I need to think." He left without looking back. The front door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. Victoria crumpled in her chair, face in her hands. My mother immediately went to her side. "Sweetheart, it is okay. We will fix this. Not a word to me, not a glance in my direction." Even now, with everything exposed, Patricia's first instinct was to comfort the daughter who had stolen from me. I watched them for a moment. The pattern, crystal clear, one final time. 5 years, I said, $72,000, and not one of you thought I deserved the truth. My mother looked up, defensive. "We were trying to protect you." From what? From knowing my own family was stealing from me? It was not stealing. It was borrowing. Borrowing requires consent. And repayment. I gave neither. My father spoke then, his voice quiet and defeated. "Hannah, I am sorry. I know it does not change anything, but I am sorry. Your mother and I got in over our heads, and instead of asking for help the right way, we took the easy way." "That was wrong. I was wrong." Patricia glared at him. "Richard!" "No, Patricia. Enough. We did this. We need to own it." I gathered my folder and walked toward the door. Victoria looked up from her mother's arms. "Hannah, wait." I did not stop. My mother's voice followed me. "Look what you have done. You have destroyed your sister's marriage." I paused at the door. "No, Mom. Victoria destroyed her marriage when she forged my name. I just handed Marcus the matches." I reached for the handle. Patricia's voice cut through the room one more time. "Hannah, wait. There is something else you should know." I stopped, but did not turn around. "The house. Victoria's house. It is not just in her name. Your father co-signed the refinance. If you go after Victoria legally, you will destroy him too. His retirement, his credit, Everything. Is that what you want? To put your own father in financial ruin? I turned slowly and looked at my mother, then at my father. He would not meet my eyes. I will be in touch after Christmas, with my attorney. I opened the door and walked out into the cold December air. Snow was beginning to fall again, soft and silent. Behind me I could hear Victoria sobbing, my mother's voice murmuring comfort, my father saying nothing at all. I got in my car and drove away from the house I had helped pay for, the family I had helped support, and the lies I had helped maintain with my silence. They had weaponized my father against me, made him a human shield. If I pursued justice, I would destroy him too. They were counting on my love for him to make me back down. 3 months ago, that might have worked. But that was before I learned what they were capable of. Before I understood that their love had always been conditional, always been transactional, always been a trap. I drove back toward Denver with snow falling on my windshield and one thought repeating in my mind. Whatever came next, I was done being the family's silent foundation. It was time to let them see exactly what happened when that foundation walked away. The drive back to Denver felt like moving through water. Everything was slow, heavy, unreal. The Rocky Mountains stretched ahead of me, indifferent to the chaos unfolding in my life, and I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My evidence folder sat on the passenger seat, thicker now than when I had arrived at my parents' house. But the weight I felt had nothing to do with paper. My mother's words echoed in my mind. Your father co-signed the refinance. If you go after Victoria legally, you will destroy him too. They had weaponized my father against me, made him a human shield. The moment I discovered the fraud, they had already built in a failsafe. Richard Brooks, 64 years old, his retirement and credit tied to Victoria's house. If I pursued justice, I would take him down too. They were counting on my love for him to make me stop. My phone rang through the car speakers. Daniel Reyes. I was about to call you, I said. How did the meeting go? I laughed. But there was no humor in it, about as well as expected. Worse, actually. I told him everything. Marcus discovering the truth and walking out. Victoria's tears and my mother's immediate rush to comfort her. The revelation that my father had co-signed the refinance. Daniel listened without interrupting. That complicates things, he said when I finished. But it does not change the fundamentals. It changes everything. If I pursue this, I take down my father too. Your father made a choice, Hannah. He signed documents he knew were connected to fraud. He is not a victim here. He is a participant. He is still my father. And Victoria is still your sister. That did not stop her. I had no response to that. He was right, and we both knew it. There is something else, Daniel continued. I found additional documentation about the refinance. When Victoria took over the mortgage, there were irregularities. What kind of irregularities? The kind that could unravel everything. But I need to verify before I say more. Can you come to my office first thing tomorrow? Christmas Eve, I know, but this cannot wait. I told him I would be there at 8 and ended the call. The snow was falling harder now, and I turned on my wipers, watching them sweep back and forth across the windshield. Whatever Daniel had found, it was serious enough that he wanted to meet on Christmas Eve. That alone told me the situation was about to get worse. I got home around 3:30. My apartment felt different somehow, smaller, quieter. I dropped my evidence folder on the kitchen counter and stood in the silence, just breathing. The Christmas lights from the building across the street cast colored shadows through my window. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear music playing. I thought about my father, Richard Brooks, who taught me to ride a bike when I was 6, who stayed up late helping me with math homework in high school, who cried at my college graduation the only time I ever saw him emotional. That was the father I remembered, the father I wanted to believe still existed somewhere beneath the man who had signed fraudulent documents and let his wife orchestrate the theft of his daughter's identity. When did he become this person? When did he decide that protecting Victoria's lifestyle was worth sacrificing my future? Or had he always been this way, and I was just too desperate for his approval to see it? My phone rang at 5 o'clock. Victoria. I almost did not answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need for closure. Maybe just masochism. Hannah, please do not hang up. Her voice was wrecked, hoarse from crying, all the polish and confidence stripped away. I said nothing. I waited. Marcus will not answer my calls. He took Lily and Emma to his mother's house. They will not even let me talk to my own kids. This is the worst day of my life. What do you want, Victoria? I want to fix this. I want to make it right. Tell me what I have to do. Tell me what you want. What I want is the last 10 years back. Can you give me that? Silence. Can you give me back my credit? My down payment for the house I wanted? The trust I had in my own family? Hannah, please. What I want is a sister who never stole from me in the first place. Can you give me that? More silence. Then, very quietly, she said something I never expected to hear. I was jealous of you. I waited. Let her continue. I have always been jealous. You were smarter, more capable. You did not need anyone. Mom and Dad gave me everything because I demanded it. But they respected you. I saw how Dad looked at you when you got your CPA, like you were the child he was actually proud of. I just wanted to win for once. I processed her words. The sister who had everything, who was praised constantly, who received $40,000 weddings and paid college tuition, was jealous of me. The irony was almost too much. You did not want to win, Victoria. You wanted me to lose. And you used Mom and Dad to make it happen. That is not jealousy. That is cruelty. I did not mean for it to go this far. The loan was supposed to be temporary. I was going to pay it back before you ever noticed. You opened 3 accounts over 2 years. That is not temporary, that is systematic. I got in deeper than I planned. Every time I thought I could get out, something else happened. Marcus's business hit a rough patch. The girls needed things. The house needed repairs. So every time you needed money, you did not ask me for help. You just took it. Asking would have meant admitting I was not doing as well as you. Do you know what it is like living in your shadow? Perfect Hannah with her perfect job and her perfect credit. I could not let you see that I was failing, so you stole from me instead. And let me think I was failing when I could not get a mortgage. You let me blame myself for your crime. Victoria was crying again. If you press charges, I will lose everything. My house, maybe my kids. Is that really what you want? To watch your nieces lose their mother? I want you to understand something, Victoria. The moment you forged my signature, you made a choice. Every consequence that follows is because of that choice, not mine. I ended the call and set my phone on the coffee table. I felt drained, empty. Victoria's confession should have given me some satisfaction. Instead, it just made everything sadder. My sister had spent her whole life competing with me for a prize I never knew existed, and in the end, she destroyed us both trying to win. At 6:30, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Hannah, I need to tell you something. Your mother does not know I am writing this. A second message. I want you to know the truth, the whole truth. A third. The house situation is more complicated than what Patricia told you. A fourth. There is a reason I co-signed, and it was not to protect Victoria, it was to protect you.